going to turn on the, okay. All right, back to normal here. Okay, so how many times, and I'm going to go to the next slide here, how many times have you found yourself in a grocery store or a Home Depot looking at products on the shelf that visually have very different colors? One example that I clearly remember that matches this specific picture. Many years ago, when I was shopping for Uncle Ben's rice, I were probably thinking I should probably get a life if this is a prime example of my past memories. But anyways, vibrant orange corporate color of Uncle Ben's is probably one of the most recognized corporate colors we can all envision. I remember looking at boxes on the shelf in this grocery market, and similar to this picture, seeing boxes that were very bright, vibrant orange, what I expected, and what I associate with Uncle Ben's rice. I also saw that there were other boxes that were a dull and somewhat lackluster orange, and to varying degrees. I chose the bright, vibrant orange over the other boxes. And in hindsight and thinking about that, my impression was that the dull-colored boxes were probably older, and the brighter, more vibrant boxes were more recently put on the shelf. So, of course, I want the newest that's on the shelf. So that's what I chose. And this is an example of, accurate and consistent brand color, definitely and clearly affects buyer behavior. At the same time, it presents a very large challenge to packaging printers. So I wanted to present some of the flexo package printer challenges, and to a lot of you out there, this is going to be very obvious because you run into them, which is probably why you're attending this seminar. I want to preface this with what I'm going to review here or go over are the values and some of the key elements. Obviously, I'm not going to get into every element. We will grow this, and we will present other webinars in the future that digs down even deeper. So let's start with what you're experiencing today are consumers that have become extremely brand aware and very color critical. We've all heard of the Coca-Cola red requirements. Those actually, from my earliest memories in the print industry, which I've been in it for about 25 years, Coca-Cola has very stringent, the cans are printed the same Coca-Cola red, the packaging, has proliferated throughout our industry and really raised the bar for our packaging printers, and a challenge on how to maintain consistent and accurate color, brand color, when a single or repeat customer job, and the challenge really is increased when it's printed in multiple press locations. An example, Uncle Ben's rice, for instance, when that's printed, they actually have a 24-hour from print to being on the truck and traveling to the grocery market that it's going to be stocked in. Domino's pizza boxes, I know, are printed in multiple locations by multiple vendors. So it's a challenge on how do you get those colors to consistent and accurate across different facilities or what I call multiple press locations. And currently, oftentimes, the customer expectations are not being met. Why? That's part of what we're going to get into. Historically, the eye has been really the only method that is utilized for checking color accuracy. As we know, it's highly subjective. One person to another, the way they see colors is different and inaccurate. A lot of other variables as far as lighting, you know, how late you up the night before. You know, there's just so many variables involved that it's hard to figure out how to tie that together. Now take that in one location and multiply it. So now you have multiple locations, multiple facilities that have to match color to the customer's requirements. One factoid or statistic that I think is actually larger at this point is 60% of brand perception depends on color accuracy. That was from Packaging Printing Survey done back in 2009. And the color quality assurance process becomes more of a business exercise than a technical one. The technical ability to do this is there. Whether companies choose to implement or value or will invest in implementing this process, that's the true business exercise, and that's a few of the things that I want to go through.
Looks like we have a lot of questions coming in, and I just want to remind people that we will be addressing all of the questions at the end of the webinar, but please keep them coming. Lets us know that you're really engaged.
Thank you, Allison. And yes, keep the questions coming. We will be fielding them at the presentation. So let's review the current process, and this is a very simplistic diagram of what happens when a customer order is generated. And basically, it's generated, job kit is created and distributed. In this example, Oregon, Florida, Texas. The individual print facilities will go out and, based on the customer requirements, have ink formulated for the job. Now, as you may guess or may all understand, obviously, when you're using different ink suppliers, different locations, formulate ink, it will not always formulate to the same values. Now, to ink companies' defense, it's impossible to actually formulate ink that will exactly match colors that were printed before. There's always going to be some level of variance. The trick is how to verify that the ink you're getting is in the customer tolerance. That's the real trick, and that's the real challenge here. So let's go through the steps on implementing a color QA process. I consider these some of the most vital. One is creating and managing customer jobs. Another is how to manage ink and color libraries. I think a key component is to remove the subjectivity, the subjective nature of visually your eye judging color accuracy and implementing a more empirical process of using a spectrophotometer to actually take measurements. And here what's very important is not only to measure color, but let's look at the trend. Let's do a trend analysis of the press's performance on individual and multi-press locations that are printing the same job to see how well they're performing. And we'll go through these items one by one. So, step one, and I'm putting these in steps in somewhat order. What's really important is creating and distributing the print job information that contains all required information, the color values, the target tolerances, everything a printer needs to be able to print that job and be able to ensure that it is color accurate and meets the customer expectations. So creating the cover job and then actually having the ability to post it to a centralized area, centralized server on the internet that multiple press locations that are printing the same or repeat job have access to, so they can all use the same target color tolerances and values. state obvious, this will enable them in a multi-press location situation to all be working on the same page, using the same color settings, the same tolerances, same information. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take you through step by step the managing a customer job from our perspective. Now, open up with customer information. So this is going to be mundane that you're already doing, obviously you're already doing, but since it's my webinar, I'm going to do it anyway, just because I want to show you completely what needs to happen. First thing is obviously the customer information, name, customer, contacts, all the requisite information specific to this customer job. Oftentimes, obviously, a unique ticket number. It's going to be ink colors. Okay, what are, it's a 5-color job. What are the designated ink colors? Again, this is much already being done as far as you're telling the customer, you're being told, if you are the customer, the printer, that these are the ink colors that you're going to be using. What I've found in dealing with a lot of different packaging printers is that the metrics for measuring, in other words, what the customer is looking for information that they want to get out of this press run varies. Some want to see only solids. Others want to measure for dot gain. Some very specifically want to do 2%, 25, 50, 75. So having the color bar specific to that customer's needs, including the job information, is important because it's finding the information that the customer wants to get at the end of that press run. To me, one of the most important are color tolerances. Having the colors, color reference colors, that you're using to compare when printing on press. Having the delta E tolerance, so in other words, what level of accuracy do you have to print in? What your customer target densities are per color, density range. And I'll just quickly go through gray balance, prints. Interesting side note, interestingly enough, by the way, is we're also encountering customers who now not just how well a overprint is trapped, but what delta E is. Well, it is you're trying to get to a certain color value. And the last are your tints for dot gain, what those values are, how much allowable dot gain will you allow for dot gain. So this is all information that needs to be shuttled to all the different print facilities so they can actually go and have the information they need, print the job, and check it. Posting customer job information, basically what you want to get is, and there are a number of solutions out there, is a software solution that's going to post that job information that's created by the quality control manager, press room manager, pre-press manager, or could be the pressifier. It gives them the ability to remotely create that job, set job, and the solution would then go and distribute all that information on the customer, the tolerances, the color values, to the various press facilities that was going to be printed at. So they all have the information, okay? They have the values. What happens next? Well, on one of my earlier slides, I showed how that the individual print facilities were going and they're going to their ink companies and they're having the ink formulated and they're getting them back and they're visually looking against what the customer has signed off on, which what the customer signed off on could be something to the effect of a something that previously printed, a previously printed job. It could be an ink drawdown. It could be any number of things, but again, it's a visual, subjective method. So one of the things is, let's ensure that your ink is the right color. And do that. Use a spectral photometer and measure it. Measure it against the customer-approved color target and get the actual custom color library that's going to be used on press. Now, there's also a way to, if the customer does not have a actual color target that they're specifying, but they're supplying with a physical visual target, well, that's where you measure that physical visual target of the ink drawdown of the previously printed piece and create that target reference value that you're going to use to make sure that the color on press is accurate. The beauty of doing it this way is you can analyze the inks that are being formulated to make sure that they are the correct values before you hit the button and start the press. Last thing you want to do is get everything inked up, everything's rocking and rolling, and you figure out there's a problem, and now you have to backtrack and figure out what's wrong, and it could be just a matter of the specific ink they're using is not accurate. Again, I want to stress that ink is never the same from batch to batch. The other thing I mentioned is the ability to import and export color libraries in common formats. There are a lot of software packages, ink formulation software out there that you need to be compatible with because a lot of different vendors are being used to generate ink. There are a lot of different quality control software solutions out there that you want. They need to be able to use this information. And when you're creating a customer color library, your ink vendor is going to want to get that data that will help them formulate that ink accurately. So compatibility of being able to import and export these color libraries is a very key element. Step 3, measure color. How do you determine a color is accurate unless you're measuring it? A famous statement. So the ideal is to measure a color in real time so you can catch whether the color, the density, or there are substantial dot gain variations early in the print process. Now, flexo presses, roll-to-roll presses, measuring color in real time, and again, this is the idea would be to have an actual spectral photometer that is mounted on the press itself, giving you real-time live measurements so you can audit how well or monitor how well a press run is actually performing to the customer tolerances. That's ideal. But at the same time, getting the information, even if it's post-process, is important because you want to basically be able to catch when there are problems. Let me just go in real time for a second. Picture roll and your current method or your current printing method is you don't really find out that the color went off into left field and way out of customer tolerance halfway through a roll. You find out at the end of a roll. So real-time measuring, you hear is if you catch mistakes in real time, not mistakes, advantages in real times, then that means you make the decision to stop the press, saving half of a roll of paper and a lot of ink, take corrective action, or if you see density problems, having the ability to go ahead and add extender maybe to the change the viscosity of the bucket of ink you happen to be using. It just gives you the ability to catch problems early. And it's removing subjectivity by measuring the color rather than with an instrument rather than with the human eye. But measuring is extremely important. I don't want to minimize, by the way, that the fact that you don't just measure, you do also visually want to look at what printed. So that's subjective. I want to look at it, but you also want to empirically make sure that the measured value, what's being printed is within the tolerance. There you go. The deal is you have that customer information, and you've already sent this to the various print locations in Florida, Oregon, Texas, and Illinois. In real time, as they're taking measurements, what happens is every measurement is automatically being uploaded to a quality software server and relayed back to the quality manager, press room manager, maybe the print specifier, so they can in real time actually look at how a press is performing. Imagine that. Imagine being a quality manager sitting in your office and you see something substantially go out of tolerance and getting on the phone down in the press room going, whoa, stop. Take the monitor. So it gives the ability to actually monitor in real time. One of the things that I'm sure you've all experienced, I know I've seen several times, are customers, they're getting more color savvy anyways, as I've mentioned earlier, and it's no longer a matter of trusting that a job that's 500,000 impressions or 1 million impressions is accurate based on you, the printer, saying this is accurate. More, they're saying, you know what, I really want to see the data. I want to understand and see proof that press run, it met my metrics, it met my tolerances. It's important to provide that information along with the job to get back to the customer. And information that you typically want to bundle back to that customer or give them access to, by the way, another nice thing about having a software solution is you don't necessarily have to print out a report and put it to them or provide it to them, in hard copy form. You can actually set it up to have them log in and get it right after the job's done, if that's what you want to do. So, job audit report, all the customer information, the overall analysis per color, and this is an averaged analysis. So, for instance, on this screen it's saying, okay, cyan and density, it was overall an average throughout the press run. It was color, though, point of the whole thing, and your dot gain was out as well. So it's giving you a averaged, accumulated synopsis, an analysis of how well it performed on colors, prints, so on and so forth. Then you want to dig a little deeper and say, okay, again, it's average, but it's digging deeper on the individual colors, what the actual target data was. Okay, my target density was 1.39. My edge measured was 1.31. And based on my range that I specified, my target tolerances, it failed. So it goes through on density and it analyzes, gives you all the information you need to understand that your tolerances were used, passed or failed, and your dot gain, density, as well as your colorimetric, your colors. Now, something to note that I always like to note is on the colorimetric analysis, to me, color is the main metric here in a lot of ways, because in the end result, that's what you're targeting, that's what you're shooting for, is accurate color. So although some things may have failed overall, may have passed colorimetrically, and that's something to keep your eye on.
This question just came in, and I feel like it's a great one to address right now. This one wants to know if, other than average data, is it possible to get the individual actual scanned data?
That's actually a really good question, Allison. As a matter of fact, it depends on the specific solution that you choose. A lot of the solutions that are out there for monitoring color quality and tracking it do offer the ability to export the actual individual scan data. So if you want to get it in spreadsheet format of all the color data, and, measure, target, dot gain, analysis. A lot of the solutions out there do provide that. That's probably a very important question when you're considering which solution to purchase, where you can get that data. And what's important is that, as I mentioned very early on, different customers like to get report on different things. Okay, the way they cut up the data and analyze it is very different customer to customer. So our data, which also incidentally gives you the ability to interface with other applications that are out there in the world, it gives you that capability to actually offer that data so it can be imported into other applications and utilized however the customer wants it. And just in the job audit report, topping analysis, gray balance analysis is very important. Again, just to give you a reality check on how it went and to be able to prove to the customer it's accurate. Okay, 4.5. Make sure the audience is still awake. All of you still awake, please raise your hands. Okay, just checking. I really can't see you anyways, but I know death by PowerPoint can be a painful and agonal death. I just want to assure you that we're actually getting through this and approaching the Q&A session, so fear not. We will get through this, and the sound of my voice will leave, well, at some point here, and you can ask me questions. Okay, analysis. Cornellis, he's a certified G7 expert and co-chair of the Graphical Committee and extremely well known throughout the print industry. The press is the most complicated mechanical part of the process, and because of this, it is part of the manufacturing process that deserves the most attention. In most plants, press conditions are constantly changing. It should not come as a surprise to find out that the press deserves a lot of attention. Again, stating the obvious, but here's the challenge. How do you know when your press really needs attention? And to me, one of the key elements is tracking how your press is performing, especially in a multi-press location environment. So whatever solution you choose, you want to make sure that for the individual job, it provides a visual trend analysis so you can track the press performance and adhere to the customer tolerances and throughout the whole press run. In addition to that, you want to really see over time how well does press perform, and the same recurrent print jobs that are using the same colors in multiple locations. Having the ability, first of all, to see in these multiple locations, in this in this particular case, Massachusetts, Kentucky, New York, Florida, Texas, and California, and see how well it performed. In this instance, you can look at Kentucky and say, okay, density anyways, you did not pass here, but in the other locations it did. Also being able to drill down and seeing how many scans were done, seeing the color information as well as density and how well the performance was done. This is going to really indicate whether you are starting to encounter a true press problem that needs to be addressed. You can see a trend of a constant, out of tolerance condition. And I'm going to put a side note here. When you're evaluating whether you're in or out of tolerance, don't wait until you're out of tolerance to take corrective action. Very important. If you see there's a trend towards, and I'm going to go back to my previous one. If you see a trend, and this is not a good example, but say the trend starts out, starts out low and then starts increasing, don't wait until it gets to the actual tolerance. Start looking at, okay, I know based on this trend, I'm going to go out of tolerance. Let's see what the problem is, and start doing some analysis right away. Real-time data analysis is just such an multiple job trend analysis, and again, having remote access to a server to the principal parties is important. A synopsis of what we've covered. I mean, basically, it's the overall implementation of a color quality assurance process, which to me is something that's not only critical, it's required in today's packaging market. Graphic printing, packaging has just come leaps and bounds in quality that now everybody uses the term offset quality, and it's very true. So, but our tools on a flexographic press are limited on how to do that. So monitoring and really evaluating what's happening on press and catching problems early is important. It's going to reduce the number of remakes that you have to do, which it's going to substantially reduce the cost through the savings of ink and paper wastage. I made up the word wastage. I'm not sure if it's really a word or not, but again, my webinar, I get to add words to the dictionary.
I told Bob to take that out.
She did, but I couldn't. So, minimizing the amount of ink and paper that's wasted, that catching a problem mid-roll versus at the end of a roll is a prime example. This is also going to increase the satisfaction and loyalty of your customers, because you're going to meet their color requirements. They're not going to go someplace else when they're happy. And it will reduce the overall labor costs and increase the operational efficiency. Another thing I don't have listed here is it's also going to increase your ability to attract higher level customers. In other words, if you're doing good enough color now, if you can offer the ability to do critical brand color, attract a higher level of customer, and be able to prove it, you'll be demonstrating. I'd like to take the rest of the allotted time to answer questions. I thank you, by the way, for attending. We had a very good turnout. I also want to stress the fact that you can feel free to contact me if you have additional questions on this webinar or Teshcon products. That's my email address and my phone number. And again, I welcome any communications you wish to have. Please do not hesitate to contact me. And with that, I'm going to hand this over to Allison.
And I just wanted to say thank you to Bob, and also that this webinar will be recorded, and it will be on our website hopefully by tomorrow or the next day. So we have a lot of great questions here coming in, and we can go through them now.
Yep. Can we just hold on for a second there, Allison?
Sure.
Okay. So we're gonna go ahead and Allison, go ahead and ask some questions, and I'll do my utmost to try to answer them.
The first question that we have is, how do you check the color tolerance of the ink that the printer receives from his ink supplier?
Getting back to what is supplied to you by the ink supplier, what the ink supplier is going to do is they're going to formulate to the specification. Actually, I'll back up even further. Customers supply you an ink drawdown, or they make a previously printed piece, and what you can do then is you can take measurements and supply that data to your ink vendor. When your ink vendor comes back and supplies you with the ink that you're going to use on the job, I heavily suggest doing an ink drawdown. Doing an ink drawdown on the actual material that you're going to be printing on. Because the ink supplier does not have the luxury of always having the material you're going to be using to print on. So even if they supply an ink drawdown, it won't necessarily be on the paper you're printing on, and the color of paper affects the color of the ink. So do an ink drawdown on the material you're going to be printing, and then take your spectrophotometer and take a measurement and see that that ink is indeed falling within the customer specified tolerances. Or if not, you need to go back to your ink vendor and say, we have a problem. Probably your best approach.
Thanks, Bob. Just want to let everyone know that you can continue to type in your questions, and it seems like we may have lost a few here. If you don't hear your question, please feel free to type it in again. Second one we have is, if the ink is within the tolerance, then you need to monitor the color while the press is running.
Okay, that's a good one. There's a number of reasons, and one of the main ones is that even if your ink is in tolerance, as you're printing and ink's flowing, all the mechanical variations that you're going to encounter, the Anlux rollers, the tension, there's so many variables that will affect how that ink is being laid down on the material you're printing on, that you need to monitor the color. You need to make sure that something has not happened on the press or in the press to cause it to drift. And that's the real answer, is you need to monitor it, because there always will be things that will happen that will cause changes in the press run.
Great. The third question we have is, how do you correct for color inaccuracy while the press is running?
Yeah, that's always, especially for flexographic printing, that's always a challenge, because the ability to adjust for color variation is limited. I mean, you have viscosity, you have pH, you have Anlux rollers, tension. So there are things that you already know and are doing. You can swap in a new bucket of ink. That's not a problem. Really, what the main thing is what this is key in the whole process is monitoring color, catching when the color goes out. It's when you don't catch that and you go through just rolls of paper, buckets of ink, just to find out at the end of it that it does not meet your or the customer's expectations, and you're caught in a situation where the customer's unhappy and you're unhappy because you have to redo the job. So you do the things you will do, but at the same time, the real key here is monitoring the press run.
Great. The fourth question that we have is, can my ink supplier tell me how accurate the ink they are supplying really is?
Okay. Yes. The answer is yes. I mean, when ink vendors are producing ink, they have spectrophotometers, and they can actually supply. If you have them do an ink drawdown or what have you, they can supply, based on that formulation and what they produce, how far off from the actual tolerance the ink they're formulating is. Now, and I just want to mention that impossible for an ink vendor to manufacture an ink or formulate an ink that's going to hit it dead on. So that would be a bad expectation to ever expect an ink vendor to be able to hit it dead on. So it's a matter of how close they are, but because if they're one delta E off from the specified tolerance, and your customer's tolerance is 2 delta E's, that gives you what I call wiggle room. That gives you 1 delta E's worth of wiggle room. In other words, you're already off a delta E. You only have 2, so you have a very narrow window to meet that customer's tolerance. So the more accurate you can get your ink formulated, the wiggle room you have to deal with color. And typically, what rule of thumb I've seen out there is anywhere up to a delta E maximum is what you would really want to settle for. Again, I'm going to split hairs on critical color versus good enough color, because there's a big difference between those two.
Another question that just came in. what do you mean by real time?
Real time is, and I'll just, again, this is for, I don't want to make this a TestCon specific product-oriented webinar, but I'll give an example. We have an inline product that goes right directly on a flexographic press that can actually take all the color, dot gain, density measurements in real time during production. So true real time means that we're printing the ability with the inline spectrophotometer to take measurements and in time be able to see what's happening. And it comes back to that, you do half a roll or a quarter of a roll and something happens that you need to know about. Well, with inline spectrophotometer, you're going to see it immediately and be a corrective action, including stopping the press.
Another here just came in. Can a spectrophotometer read data on a metallicized material?
Yeah, and the answer is yes. You can read a metallicized material. What you read a metallicized material is sort of important. On all of our, I'll just, again, I'm not specifically, but just overall, what you can do metallic to get accurate metallic measurement readings is use a polarization filter, because the big thing about a spectrophotometer is it's basically flashing a light and it's bouncing it off the surface of the material, and it's that reflected light, some of it's being absorbed and more, other of it's being bounced right back up to the spectrophotometer where that amount of light is being measured. When you get a metallic substance or ink or foil or somewhat, you're obviously going to get a lot of reflected light back. And for highly reflective surfaces, the polarizing filter will help filter out what I would call an over-reflected amount of light. And that's what enables you to measure metallic surfaces.
Great. Thank you for these great questions. I'll wait a second here to see if any others come in. Yep, we have another one here that just came in. How often should I take measurements on a flexo press run?
Well, that's a good question. Obviously, I wouldn't suggest trying to take a measurement for every impression, especially if you're using an inline. You would basically have thousands of scan results that you would have to go through. I would say that you'd have to decide based on the run length somewhat. 1 to 500 for maybe a shorter length, 1 to 1,000, 1 to 2,000. It really depends, because if you're doing a 500 million impression press run, taking even every 500, do the math on how many scans that is and how much data that you'll have to wade through. I'd say base your amount of scans that you do on the run length. Now, the big thing is taking fairly regular measurements along the overall run length of that run to make sure that something doesn't happen midway. It's going to cause you to have to stop the press, or you're not going to catch it and you're going to waste a lot of ink and paper.
Great. Well, I will give it another second here to see if any other questions pop up. But just as a reminder, the recorded webinar will be on our website. If you have any other questions, I think Bob put up his contact information. You can feel free to give Bob a call or send an email. And we had a couple of very specific questions that we will plan to send you an individualized email. If you had a very specific product question, please note that we'll send you an individual email so that you can take a look at that. Like maybe one or two.
Okay. I've got through a chat session, we have some actual other questions. So what's, let's see, typical color tolerances. Let me think about that. I know that challenge is, what are your typical color tolerances? And it seems like the overall, okay, let me back up. The customer who is a critical color customer, the number that seems to always pop up is a 2 delta E tolerance, which may be attainable or unattainable based on the material you're printing on and other factors. I know that there's been customers who said, well, I want a 0.5 delta E tolerance, and to me that's an unrealistic delta E to maintain in almost any environment. So what the most common is 2 delta E's that I've heard, but when you're printing on corrugated versus a transparent material or versus a high quality coated stock, you have to figure out what tolerances are going to work best. So starting out with a tolerance, let's pick a tolerance of say 3 on a film material, and then this trend analysis becomes important, because being maintain that level of accuracy is the challenge. Do you have the physical capability based on the material, based on the inks? And it's a matter of educating and setting the customer expectations correct based on that. So that's sort of the answer is, the industry seems to come up with this magic number 2, which is below 2. You don't really see a lot of difference in color below 2 via the human eye. Above 2, as that number gets higher, you see a difference in color.
There's another question that came in, Bob. Can UV inks be controlled as accurately as solvent-based inks with this system?
I mean, what we're talking about here is color. It's about, regardless of whether they're UV inks, whether they're solvent-based inks, as far as control, I can't speak to that, because how you control solvent-based inks, how you control UV inks, it's like graphic to offset to gravure to all the different print technologies. What we're seeing here is you can monitor that color. You can find out, regardless of the technology or the type of ink, whether those inks or the job is within spec, and that's the important piece to focus on. The inks won't really matter as much as being able to monitor the actual print, the printed material. What else do we have, Allison?
We have another one here. Actually, 2 more just came in. The first one is, what is the backing I should use to take measurements, and what is the difference between black backing and white backing? Okay,
good question. The backing you can use either a black or a white backing. Out of this, what the whole print industry, what consultants and what we suggest, it's all about printing to standards. Because once you start printing to standards, then that gives you the ability to control, especially in a multi-print environment, well those jobs are going to perform, because you're going to be printing to set standards. So, for instance, there is an ISO standard for backing and white backing. There are different standards, Grackle standards. So, really, what you want to do is, I would say far ISO seems to be one of the most utilized, and also the other standards tend to match very closely. I would say use something to the effect of an ISO standards for your black or white backing. As far as which one you use, it doesn't matter. So another question is, that I just saw that just popped up is we are going to change Pantone colors for LAB values in the future. And I'm not sure what exactly that means. I mean, Pantone, the Pantone, there is a digital Pantone color library that is available right from, believe it or not, Amazon.com, as well as the own site, where you actually, for around $50, buy the actual Pantone libraries that have the digital LAB values. One thing that brings up a good point, by the way, I'm going to point out, is that when using color swatch books, or let's say using Pantone libraries, oftentimes a customer will say, well, based on what you're seeing in your Pantone color library, or based on GCMI, or just a color swatch book, this is the color I want to use. One thing to be cautious of is that, like all printed material, there is variability from swatch book to swatch book. So if you're using one swatch book and then looking at another swatch book, that can cause some disparity in, let's say you take the customer signs off on a swatch book color. In the press, you have the same swatch book, but it's it's a different version, possibly printed in a different location, and it won't always match up completely. And if that's the color you're using to measure, it may not completely match up. So be cautious when a customer says, I want to use a specific swatch book color, let's say a Pantone 386C for coating. If the customer is not using the digital library with a digital value, they're just using what they're seeing on a swatch book, it may not match up. So you really need to make sure that if they're picking it out of a swatch book and using the actual digital library, or you're taking measurement from a different swatch book, that you take a measurement and make sure it matches up to what the customer signed off on.
Great. There's just one more, which might be similar to another question. Deal with tolerances on UV inks.
That was the same. That was the same question.
Okay.
Yeah. Same answer to that, and same deal as before. Is a lot of it's based not on the specific ink set or technology. It's based on the customer's expectations and their set tolerances. Determines that. What we're saying is it's all about monitoring and catching colors that fall outside those customer tolerances.
Well, that's great. Lots of great questions. Thank you all so much.
And I see one that someone wants my contact info again. I'm just going to send to all participants my contact info, and once all attendees. Again, my name is Bob Burns, and I am the Director of Technical Services, and I welcome your contact anytime. Can't answer the question, which I definitely don't know anything, and I want everybody to understand that. But still feel free to contact me, and if I don't know it, I'll find out what the answer is. I missed a 7 there. She's right. I typed horribly. Okay. Boom. Are there any other questions that we can answer here that we did not? Okay. I want to thank you all again. I'll hand this back to Allison, and I'm pretty much done, I think.
Yeah, I think we'd like to wrap it up for today. We'd love to hear your feedback on the webinar and the information that we've provided. Please feel free to contact us. Bob just gave you his contact information again, or visit our website. And thank you all for your time.
Thank you very much.